are going to take up the study of the Kathopanishad. It's also known as the Kathopanishad and occurs in the Yajurveda. Now the Kathopanishad starts with a beautiful invocation which defines the relationship between the teacher and the taught. We all chant it many times. I am sure you must have heard it before many times. It starts with Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryam Karavavahai, Tejasvinavaditamastu Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. May there be peace. So peace is the most important thing. So peace, Shanti. So now Sahana Vavatu, the key word to note in this particular invocation is Saha. Sahana Vavatu, which means both. You and I, not only me, but not only you, but you and I. Sahana Vavatu, may both of us be protected. Which means the teacher and the taught, if you like to put it, the taught and the teacher, if that is more important. I think it's more important. Sahana Bhavatu, may both of us be protected. Watch the word Saha. Sahanau Bhunaktu, may the Supreme Being be pleased with both of us. Sahaviryam Karavavai, may both of us work together with vigor, virya. Tejasvina aditamastu, may our study, may our swadhyaya make us illumined. May Tejas come into our system. And the last one, Ma vidvishavahai, let us not fight with each other. I mean, let us not dislike each other. Because if you dislike each other, I say what is right, you try to disprove, I try to disprove, it becomes an argument. It's not a discussion or a dialogue. So after having said that invocation, I will pick up important parts and then we will look into this. And it's very simple, please understand, the Upanishads are not so complicated. Babaji used to tell me, go and talk about the Upanishads. People think that they are so complicated, they are simple. Just if one can listen carefully, that's important. The story starts with Rishi Vajashravasa, who performs a sacrifice. It's called a Vishwajit sacrifice, which means that by which he can win over the universe. Vishwa. Now the only way to win over the universe is to be free of death. Otherwise we cannot win over the universe. The universe wins over us. Anyway, so when he performs the sacrifice, the priests, the brahmanas who come to perform the sacrifice, when the sacrifice is over, first we must remember, to attain anything at all, a sacrifice is essential. Apart from the ritualistic mode of sacrifice, the very meaning of sacrifice is that you can't get anything without sacrificing something. Now he wants to win over the universe, Vishwajit. And for that, those who perform the sacrifice, who helped him to achieve it, he gives away gifts. And this young boy, Nachiketas, who is very young and still not caught up in the what you call the evasive and ingenious ways of society. So therefore he is called Nachiketas. I said yesterday, Nachiketa, one who does not know, one who is not yet caught up in the formalities and the deviations of the grown-ups. His mind is still fresh and young. So he watches his father. give away these gifts to the Brahmins who have come for the sacrifice. And he notices that the gifts are cows which cannot walk, which have no milk, who can't eat anymore, who are blind and lame and useless. So it enters into the mind of this boy who is fresh and clear, not yet caught up by our pretensions. And he says, I have a very important question. He says to Vajashravasa, what is the use of giving away these useless things as a sacrifice? What kind of sacrifice is this? When you say sacrifice, you give what is valuable to you, what is dearest to you. This is not a sacrifice. Why are you giving away useless things? So he keeps repeating this many times. His father looks him squarely into his eyes and says, since you have asked me many times, who will you give me to? Because I am your dearest and most valuable belonging. I give you away to death. Now, as I explained yesterday, there is one school of thought which thinks that Vajashravasa was irritated because his son kept asking and he said, go to death. But there are other interpretations which I would probably support, which is being a great rishi and understanding that this young boy was still uncorrupted and ready for the inquiry into the truth. He gave him away to death, meaning he said, unless you understand death, you cannot understand life. So here I give you to Yama. It's an interesting story because all of a sudden Nachiketas finds himself in the kingdom of Yama, the Lord of Death. And it was a surprise move when Yama has gone away somewhere to pick up somebody else's souls. So he has to wait in Yama's consulting room, waiting room or whatever, for 3 days. Of course, there is no one to ask after him, so no food, no water. Yama comes back and is very perturbed that a boy whose face is shining, who seems to be like a seeker of the truth, who is coming from a distinguished family of rishis, has come and waited in my place for 3 days without nobody offering him water or food or giving him any respect. So it's a big crime. Can you imagine that even Yama thinks that there are some courtesies to be followed? We don't think. Even Yama, the Lord of Death, says, what a terrible thing that this guest has come and we haven't welcomed him. Atiti Devo Bhava. A guest is like God. So, he says, to compensate for this, please ask me for 3 boons and I will grant them to you. 3 boons meaning because he has been sitting for 3 days without food and water. So that's how the story proceeds. And the first boon, of course, that Nachiketas asks, he says, when I go back, may my father be pleased with me. May he sleep in peace and may he welcome me back as the same son who went across. Because when you, as I explained yesterday, sometimes when you have seen the truth, you change so much that even your father may not be able to recognize you. He says, may he recognize me and welcome me and be at peace with himself. Second boon, I have heard, says Nachiketas, that there is a world where one does not fear death, where sadness and pain don't come. The wise call it Swarga. Tell me, Is there a way to reach that? Teach me about that sacrifice by performing which one may reach that safe world where you don't appear for long. So, Yama says, all right, second boon granted, which is, he says, in the secret hidden place, in the cave of your heart, there burns a fire which, when understood, one conquers death and moves towards, one conquers pain and sorrow and enters an abode of peace and blissfulness. That fire which burns in the secret recesses of your heart, that has to be learnt, and that sacrifice is the sacrifice of the fire. Now here there are two interpretations. One is that the fire is the burning desire to find the truth. Two, from the yogic point of view, it is also the fire that burns in the middle of your system, in the what is called the Manipura chakra, which when awakened, all the dross is burnt away and the mind becomes purified enough to proceed to the higher levels. And he explains how to build that fire, which means what are the necessity requirements to awaken and light and awaken that fire and fan it into a flame. And he grants him an additional boon. He says that fire shall henceforth, this sacrifice shall henceforth be named after you. It shall be called the Nachiketas fire. And anyone who performs the Nachiketas fire sacrifice moves towards that abode of peace and which is free from sorrow and pain. Granted. Then Nachiketas says, I have a third wish, a third boon to ask. There is this thing called death. Some say when the man dies, he is no more. Some say he is. And this death is a constant threat that keeps coming in front of everyone. No one is free of it. Is there some way by which one can conquer this punarmrityu, he calls it, this coming back and dying again and going back? Is there some way to stop this cycle? Can we be ever free and not be afraid of this death with its terrible sting? And you, the Lord of Death, are the best person to answer this question. Who else shall I ask? Now comes the crucial point of how earnest and sincere Nachiketas was. We all ask this question sometime or the other, but when the black dark clouds have passed, we no longer ask the question. We move forward. Chalo, theek hai, who's bothered? When it comes, it comes. But for Nachiketas, like King Parikshit in the Bhagavat, who sits on the banks of the Ganga waiting for death to come, knowing that it comes in 7 days. Nachiketas feels that it can come at any time. He has himself now crossed into death to see what it is. When you say crossed into death, it means to die to all that you think is dear and near to you. Need not be physical. So he says, please answer me this question. Teach me how to touch that state. Teach me what is immortality. How can one be free of death? Can we be free at all? And you are the one to answer this question. Yama stresses him in many ways. He says, look, even the Devas of ancient times had this doubt. You don't ask me this question, ask me anything else, release me from this bond, because I have to answer this question. I said I will give you 3 boons. Then he says, take all the kingdoms in the world if you like. I'll hand it over to you on a platter. What do you want? Elephants, palaces, buildings, maidens, beautiful maidens. These are all the offerings, which I am sure if offered to us, we would say, oh, forget about moksha, give me this and let me get out. Of course, he offers elephants, but in today's terms, they are Mercs and BMWs and Rolls Royces. Take all these. Take your song and dance. Every day I will open a club in your house. Take it, but don't ask me this question. Because this is not easy to answer. And why are you interested in it? Why don't you play? Nachiketas says, look, if that is the most difficult thing to attain, I want nothing but that. All other things are not so important to me. He then explains how wealth is not a permanent affair. It comes with its own problems. And then finally when we go, what happens to our wealth? We leave it behind and we cling to it so much because it has an innate attraction which is very difficult to break. Nachiket, a young boy, explains to Yama, why are you giving me these things? I don't require, they end anyway. They are useless and they come with so many strings attached. I don't want any of this. Teach me how to be free of this impermanency, how to conquer death and be immortal and not be taken for a ride. Keep your song and dance. I don't want it. This is what I want. Yama, having tested him thoroughly, says, I think you are qualified to learn this secret, which even the Devas did not know and they had doubts about, and proceeds to explain. Nachiketas in the last sloka says, tell us that about which they doubt, O death. What there is in the great passing on. This boon which penetrates the mystery, no other does Nachiketas choose. Yoyam varo guddha anupravishto nanyam tasman Nachiketa pranite. I don't want anything else. This is the only thing that this Nachiketas desires. Yama, instead of telling, yeah, this is what it is, he says, listen to me carefully and you will discover what it is. Follow this, what I am saying. He says, Yama says, different is the good and different indeed is the pleasant. These two with different purposes bind a man. Of these two, it is well for him who takes hold of the good, but he who chooses the pleasant fails in his aim. Says, now you want to study this, let me explain to you. In this world, in this universe before you, when you come face to face with this universe, you will find that there are two set of things available to us. Two options. One is that which is good, the other is that which is pleasant. Very often the good may not be pleasant, and the pleasant may not be good. But we are always faced with these two, the good and the pleasant. These two, good and pleasant, they bind a person. Of these two, one who takes hold of the good reaches the understanding of what is immortality, who he is. And the one who takes hold of the pleasant, which is of course a very temporary factor, fails to reach this aim of discovering who he is, what is his connection with the world, and how to be free of death. So what he is trying to say is, try to distinguish between that which is good and that which is pleasant, because very often that which is pleasant may not be that which is good. In any case, we always shy away from facing the unpleasant. Now, in facing the unpleasant may lie a lot of good. For instance, here is a universal unpleasant factor. What is that? We all have to go away at some point. But the brain has worked out ways and means to forget that. How? By indulging in pleasure. So that it is numbed and is not even thinking about it. Yama says, choose between that good and the pleasant. Among the good and the pleasant, one who chooses the good discovers the truth. One who chooses the pleasant does not. But you, now Yama is speaking to Nachiketas. You, Nachiketas, you have rejected, after examining both, the desires that are pleasant and seem to be pleasing, and you have not taken to the way of wealth, where many mortals sink. Now, in wealth need not necessarily be money. Wealth also is something which sometimes scholars have, learning which they are so proud of, about which a further reference comes here. It says that which you load your head with, you have not chosen that. On the other hand, you have chosen that very wisely, rejecting that which is pleasant and seem to be pleasing. Sattvam priyan priya rupamscha kaman avidhyayan nachiketo tasrakshi naitam srinikam vittamayim avapto yasyam majjanti bhavo manushyaha. Yasyam majjanti bhavo manushyaha. That means you have not chosen that path of wealth or belongings where many mortals sink. Widely apart and leading to different ends are these. One who chooses the pleasant chooses the ignorance, and one who chooses the good chooses wisdom. I know you, Nachiketas. You are eager to learn the truth and the wisdom. Many desires did not distract you. I offered you so many things. You could have easily taken them. It's a shortcut. Wonderful, happy. But no, you said, I don't want it because you have already chosen the good. Then comes this beautiful statement. You must have thought. We normally think that there is a saying, the blind leading the blind. I think many people think it comes from Shakespeare. The Upanishads is at a very conservative estimate 2000 years old. Actually, it occurs here for the first time. The Kathopanishad. Then says Yama, avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha dandramyamanaha pariyanti mudha andhenaiva niyamanaya tandaha. Very beautifully put. Abiding in the midst of ignorance, avidyayam antare vartamanaha, abiding in the midst of ignorance, swayam dhira panditam manyamana, wise in their own esteem, thinking themselves to be learned. Dandramyamanaha pariyanti mudha, fools walking on a torturous path. Andheinaiva niyamanaya tandaha, are like the blind men led by one who is himself blind. Now this is a missile hit on all. Says first in the midst of ignorance, but thinking they are wise in their own self-esteem, thinking themselves to be learned, panditaha, mudha, fools treading a tortuous path, go about like the blind leading the blind. This is mentioned here lest Nachiketas, coming from the tradition of Vajrashravasa, thinks that he knows because he has read everything. He's a, what do you call a small child who has, what do you call that? A child prodigy. Then says Yama, what lies beyond? What lies beyond that which appears to us shines not to people who are deluded by the glamour of wealth and belongings. What happens is, life becomes so easy that we think it will go on like this. If you ring a bell, everything is before us. All you have to do is press and somebody comes with a tray. So you think all life is like this. But when death comes, no matter how many bells you press, nobody is going to save us. It's only the ringing for whom the bell tolls. Ernest Hemingway. So, what lies beyond what we see with our eyes and hear with our ears, what lies beyond that does not occur to these people who are careless and deluded by the glamour of wealth, thinking this world exists, there is no other. They fall again and again in my power. Yama is speaking. Thinking that there is nothing existing other than this, other than what money or dollars can buy, they fall again and again in my power. Yama almost seems to be happy that it is happening.